Occupy protest spreads to Chimsha-Choi. Growing conflicts with inconvenienced members of the public. And a British firm to review its policy on tear gas supply for Hong Kong. Good evening. Student leaders are giving Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying until tomorrow to resign, or they will occupy government buildings. Earlier today, Occupy Central Organizer Chiang Kim-man apologized for the trouble caused to members of the public. Diane To begins our coverage.
Chiang Kim-man choked up with emotion while making his apology in Cantonese, trying to stress to the public that the goal of their action is not to ruin Hong Kong.
We are fighting for the long-term harmony of society. Without an ecosystem, I'm talking about election system, we will continue to debate, argue, and divide. And this is not the Hong Kong that we want. So I hope that they can be more tolerant. But I would like to apologize if we cause any inconvenience to them.
He also called on protesters to avoid occupying roads close to residential areas and urged those trying to occupy Sheung Shui to return and strengthen the existing rally areas. The Hong Kong Federation of Students is now giving Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying until tomorrow to resign.
We will consider to have different upgrading actions in the future days, including occupying other places like the important government offices. But we have to emphasize one very important point, that the buildings, that government offices or the government buildings that we occupy will not be the offices which have very close relationship with some social aspects.
But it remains to be seen whether organizers are able to mobilize all demonstrators together, with the movement continuing to grow. Both Occupy Central organizers and student leaders have said they're not in charge, as it is now a people's movement. Protesters in what foreign media have dubbed the Umbrella Revolution decided to all open their umbrellas ceremoniously at 3 p.m. sharp in a visual show of unity. But this display was confined to Admiralty only, showing the little coordination going on between the different sites. Diane To, TVB News.
The National Day flag-raising ceremony went off smoothly at the Golden Bohemia Square this morning, despite protests in surrounding areas. Owen Feng reports.
Just before 8 a.m, the police band played the national anthem. The national flag and the Hong Kong SAR flags then rose slowly. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, along with government officials, legislators, and foreign dignitaries, attended the ceremony. Many protesters had gathered around the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre before the start of the event. There were concerns that some would disrupt the ceremony, damaging the peaceful image of the civil disobedience movement. Some protesters held up signs urging others to remain peaceful. This student says his sign reminds all protesters that staying calm and remaining rational is a core value of the movement. Others formed a human chain to prevent any disruptions. But some protesters questioned who had put these people in charge. This woman accused the volunteer helper of protecting the police, saying he was betraying the people who got tear-gassed. But the man stressed that he was protecting the movement, not the police. Scholarism was also there. They staged a silent protest as the flags were raised.
We tried to enter the place, and while the national song have played, and we will try to turn our side and to show our disagreement towards CCP, especially for the decision made on the political reform on Hong Kong.
But not all spectators were content to have the protesters at the ceremony. This woman says the protesters are causing disturbance and damaging the prosperity of Hong Kong. Owen Feng, TVB News.
And at the National Day reception, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying said millions of eligible voters choosing their leader is better than 1,200 people on a committee making the decision. Stephanie Cho reports.
Before the chief executive even walked up onto the stage, League of Social Democrats lawmaker Leung Kwok-hung started shouting protest slogans calling on him to step down. Security guards moved swiftly to drag him out of the hall at the Convention and Exhibition Center. When he finally gave his speech, Lun Chen-ying said it's understandable that different people have different views about a desirable political reform package. But he said letting 5 million eligible voters choose their chief executive is definitely better than 1,200 people voting for one. He appealed to society to work with the government in a peaceful, lawful, rational and pragmatic manner to move constitutional development forward. Leung added that developing the one country, two systems principle and maintaining Hong Kong's prosperity and stability are important elements of the Chinese dream. During Leung's speech, District Councillor Paul Zimmerman staged an eye-catching silent protest against the police tear gas use.
CY and the police commissioner owe Hong Kong an apology, and I think they've gone a step too far. That's why I'm here today with a yellow umbrella.
Other guests at the reception urged for all parties to avoid further confrontations and enter into dialogue.
I guess the short term would be for both sides to calm down first, because currently it's all about emotion. People are getting very emotional. There's no point trying to get the people away in a short time. I think you have to allow them to release their emotion for a while until they come to sense.
There should be more communication between the people and the government, and give them a chance. The people should also give government a chance.
Local tycoon Alan Zeman doesn't think the impasse can be resolved if the CE steps down, but believes more dialogue is necessary. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
Some shop vendors and drivers have complained about the demonstrations at Canton Road in Tsim Sha Tsui. Meanwhile, the China National Tourism Administration has suspended all tours to Hong Kong. Rani Samtani has that story.
Jewelry shops on Canton Road did not open today. Notices advised customers to visit other branches. However, some tourists weren't affected by the roadblock.
I noticed that the blockade is not really all the streets along the shopping area. So there are certain areas that are closed, but some are not.
A local newspaper vendor said the occupation action was affecting his business. Still, most of the shops on Canton Road were open for business. But there weren't long queues outside the luxury brand shops that you usually see on a daily basis. This mainland visitor who was shopping in the area was supportive of people expressing their views, but didn't think they should block traffic. Another tourist noted it's hard to go around as cars and taxis cannot go to certain areas because of the traffic disruption. Because the National Day fireworks were cancelled, more than a dozen boat companies cancelled outings and refunded passengers. Meanwhile, the Travel Industry Council said it received notice that the China National Tourism Administration has suspended tours to Hong Kong, and Beijing has stopped issuing tour visas because of the traffic disruptions. Only a few tourists were out sightseeing at Golden Bohemia Square this morning. Some visitors said if they knew the Occupy movement would be taking place at this time, they wouldn't have visited Hong Kong. Council Chairman Michael Wu said he doesn't know how long the tour suspension will last. He said the number of tour groups will decrease significantly after October 4th, and Wu expressed concerns that the number of individual travelers from the mainland could decrease as well. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
And there are growing conflicts with the public inconvenienced by the Occupy protests. Diane To tells us more.
These democracy double-deckers covered in notes written by protesters have become part of the new landscape of Mongkok. This bus has been stuck here since protesters took over the junction of Nathan Road and Mongkok Road Sunday night. The bus company sent a tow truck to the scene today, hoping to retrieve the vehicle. But protesters flocked to the area upon instruction and stopped the bus from being towed away. Fire Services Department staff volunteered to take up the tough job of trying to talk protesters into opening up an emergency lane. Over in Tsim Sha Tsui, where the protest action has now spread to, some people passing through the area were annoyed that more locations were being taken over by demonstrators. "You're affecting the general public. Why are you doing this?" said this man. In the afternoon, a private car failed to pass through the Canton Road area because of the makeshift blockades. The driver called the police, insisting the demonstrators be removed. He complained about them taking up the street in Tsim Sha Tsui, as they had already occupied 3 locations on both sides of the harbour to express their views. Why is there no tear gas here? Nothing to handle these crowds, he asked the police. He said he just wanted to take his son out to play on their holiday and that he hopes he can have his right to do the lawful things he wants to do. Under the guidance of police officers, the driver eventually reversed his vehicle and drove off in another direction. Meanwhile, in Causeway Bay, trouble for a group that had successfully applied for permission to hold a protest rally. Soon after the participants started their march from Victoria Park, they found the approved route was blocked by the Occupy demonstrators. This resulted in a standoff between the two sides. The group on the march later went another way. Earlier in the day, those occupying the area did agree to open up East Point Road for emergency vehicle access. The barricades they put up will be readily removable in emergencies. But the Fire Services Department said this would still slow down the rescue process and expressed concern that in emergencies, a minute's difference could mean life or death. Diane To, TVB News.
A British